singing that song all over the world. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Juan?
Well, for the first time, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for a sitting head of state. On Wednesday, the ICC indicted Sudanese President Omar Hassan al-Bashir on 7 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, which included murder, rape, and torture in Sudan's Darfur region. The 3-judge panel said it had insufficient grounds for charges of genocide. Many Western human rights groups praised the arrest warrant, but the African Union and China warned the indictment could jeopardize the peace process in Darfur. Sudan has dismissed the charges and vowed not to cooperate with the World Court. Since the warrant was issued, Sudan has revoked the licenses of 13 foreign aid organizations, including Oxfam, Care International, Doctors Without Borders, and Save the Children. The UN says Sudan's expulsion order removes 40% of the aid workers in Darfur.
To discuss the indictment of the Sudanese President, Omar Hassan al-Bashir, we're joined by 2 guests. Richard Dicker is with us in our Firehouse studio, Director of Human Rights Watch's International Justice Program. He led the Human Rights Watch multi-year campaign to establish the International Criminal Court. Alex de Waal joins us in Boston. He's Program Director of the Social Science Research Council, Senior Fellow at the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. In 2006, he served as advisor to the African Union mediation team for the Darfur conflict. He's author of several books on Sudan, including Darfur, A New History of a Long War. Richard Dicker, let's begin with you. Why do you think this is so important, what the ICC has done, the issuing of indictments against the Sudanese president?
Well, over the last 5-6 years of the conflict in Darfur, hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians have been slaughtered, have been subject to rape as a weapon of war and terror, and we have seen forcible displacement of whole populations. These are the most serious crimes, and for them, as part of ending the conflict and honoring those who have suffered, justice needs to be done, and the impunity that has been associated with these crimes needs to be brought to an end. The ICC decision of the other day is an important step in that direction.
Alex de Waal, you're skeptical about that decision. Tell us why.
I think there seems to be a bit of a gap in the argument here. On the one hand, as Richard Dicker says, the Sudan government is responsible for some of the most heinous crimes against humanity on the books. On the other hand, the assumption seems to have been among the ICC and its supporters that the moment an arrest warrant was issued, this same government would come along tamely, would submit. And there is a very serious downside risk to indicting a sitting head of state, in fact, basically indicting an entire government structure, when there are no measures in place, no mechanisms actually to protect the people in whose name this is being issued. And what have we seen over the last couple of days? We've seen a very predictable adverse response from that same Sudan government. Now, yes, we all support justice, but can justice be pursued at the expense of withdrawing essential humanitarian support that keeps millions of people alive? And I think that's a very, very real dilemma. And so my question is not should there be accountability, but should accountability in its timing, in its process, be weighed against other considerations. And I'd like to add that the rationale put forward by the prosecutor, Moreno Ocampo, for rushing through this indictment at this process was he said there is an ongoing genocide. Now, the judges found that there wasn't. There was no charge to answer on that case. And I think there's good reason for that. There were horrendous crimes were committed 2003, 2004, and they're not being remedied. But the UN data, the data from Genocide Intervention Network, etc., indicates about 150 people are being killed every month in Darfur. And that's bad. Perhaps half of them are being killed by the government and its forces. But that does not amount to an ongoing genocide. And I think that wouldn't be a surprise to Richard Dicker, because his organization, Human Rights Watch, has never said there's genocide in Darfur. So why the urgency of rushing this thing through at this moment, when a huge humanitarian operation is actually providing life-giving assistance, and we are imperiling that?
Richard Dicker.
Well, I think Alex makes some important and good points. And there are some of those points that I would agree with, in that there can indeed be a tension between peace and justice. I don't think any good comes from denying the tension of bringing about both peace and justice. And I also think Alex is correct when he flags for us the uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. And no one is a clairvoyant here who can predict results one way or the other. But what I do take strong exception to, and what Alex has just said, is first his use of the term rush. My gosh, these killings in Darfur have been going on for 6 years. The Security Council asked the ICC prosecutor to begin an investigation and possibly charge individuals 4 years ago. It was back in July of 2008 that the prosecutor announced his request for a warrant, and only now, 8 or 9 months later, that the judges have rendered a decision. I think Alex's term rushed is ill-advised from the perspective of those who remain victims and have been victims. On the genocide count, I think Alex is correct. Human Rights Watch, on the facts that it gathered, has not found genocide. But I would remind Alex that widespread or